And just to let you know, Councillor Morale's camera's playing up, so he can't appear, but he's fully linked by audio.
That's correct. I'm here, Chair.
Okay. Okay, I think the live stream has started now. Can someone confirm that?
Yes, Chair, it started.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm Councillor Philip Davis. I'll be chairing this hearing of Subcommittee A of the Licensing and Public Protection Committee of Birmingham City Council today. And if you could all mute your microphones at this stage, that will help with communication. And also turn off your cameras with the exception of committee members. But we're noting that Councillor Morale's camera is not functioning today, so he will not want to be on camera, but he's fully linked by audio. Okay. If everyone attending could make sure their mobile phones are on silent and they're obviously in a place where they won't be interrupted, that would be very helpful to the meeting today. It's very important that those attending the meeting and making representations over here, members of the subcommittee and officers, any distractions could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or to another date and time of the regulations for these types of meeting. I also confirm this is a public meeting and is therefore being live streamed on the City Council's website in order that the general public can view it. The formal order of business is as follows. Item 1, notice of recording webcast. I advise the meeting to note that this meeting will be webcast live or subsequent broadcast by the Council's meeting YouTube site, and that members of the press and public may record and take photographs except for confidential or exempt items. Item 2, declaration of interest. Members are reminded they must declare all relevant pecuniary and other registrable interests arising from any business to be discussed at this meeting. Item 3, apologies and notification of nominee members. We have no apologies today. And 4, we note the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of October, 24th of October and 7th of November 2022. Colleagues, can you note those?
Noted.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I welcome you to this hearing for an application in respect of DC Supermarket 138 Church Road, Yardley, Birmingham, B25 8UT. As I said, my name is Councillor Philip Davis. I chair this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee today. And with me are the members of the subcommittee, Councillors Mary Locke and Councillor Simon Morale. As I said, Councillor Morale is able to hear us fully and participate, but his camera is not functioning today.
That's correct, Chair. Just want to say hello, just so everyone knows I'm here.
Okay, thank you for the confirmation. That's very helpful. We also have present the licensing officer, Mr. Pinder Nandra, the committee manager, Ms. Katie Townsend, and the committee lawyer, Ms. Joanne Swampillai. And now to the parties attending today. Could I ask Mr. Edge to identify himself representing the applicant, Mr. Sharif Najat?
I can, thank you, Chair. And just to confirm that my camera is also not functioning correctly at the moment.
Okay, thank you. You did put that out earlier on. Thank you for that, Mr. Edge. And next, those making representations. Now, it'll be, I think, Mr. Christopher Jones. Mr. Jones from West Midlands Police.
Chair, it's Huram Taj from West Midlands Police. I'm logged in on Christopher Jones's terminal. I was having technical difficulties from my own terminal, and apologies for my delaying us into this meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taj. Yes, that we were expecting you, so that's good you were able to attend today. And Mr. Wright from Licensing and Enforcement. Mr. Wright?
Good morning, Chair. I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Taj, do you want, as a person making representations, do you wish to withdraw any of those representations at this stage of the hearing?
No, Chair.
Okay. Mr. Wright, same question to you. You're making representations. Do you wish to withdraw those at this stage of the hearing?
No, Chair.
No. Okay, thank you. I assume all parties have read and understood the Licensing Committee's procedural rules sent out with a notice of today's hearing. Please note that given the nature of today's proceedings, I may at my discretion amend the procedural rules to reflect the fact that the meeting is taking place online, but I want to assure everyone that any such amendments won't impact on the parties' right to a fair hearing. As you know, we use a chat function, which is at the top of your, should be at the top of your toolbar, a little sort of speech bubble, to aid communication in these meetings, and also to list attendance. If you could now use the chat function to just log your attendance at the meeting by writing in your name. That would be great assistance to the record. I'm just about to do that. If we put those in now, and then we can proceed. Okay, there we are. Right, thank you. I can see those coming through. Thank you very much for that, everyone. Okay, there we are. Back to main screen. So I will also confirm you all also have the chat facility as a backup if your audio and visual goes down. If you could notify using chat as soon as possible that that's happened, that will go to the officers monitoring the meeting. I don't think we have anybody dialed in my audio telephone today. Again, on cameras, although I appreciate two of us have technical difficulties, with the exception of subcommittee members, please keep your camera off unless you are the person speaking. This will assist us in terms of any bandwidth problems. Okay, so I've now come on to preliminary points, which is addressed to Mr. Edge at this stage. Mr. Edge, do you have any preliminary points? These are usually points about procedure, as you know.
No, none at all. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Mr. Taj, do you have any points about process at this stage?
No, Chair.
No. Okay. And Mr. Wright, do you have any preliminary points at this stage?
No, Chair.
No. Okay. Thank you. I think you're pretty much aware that the procedure is that first we'll go to the licensing officer, Mr. Nandra. Then we'll go to Mr. Edge for the applicant to present their case, and you'll have around up to 20 minutes to do that, Mr. Edge. And then those making representations will be invited to make their case, so West Midlands Police and then licensing. And of course, if we speak clearly and slowly as possible to assure the public can hear what we're saying, and notes can be taken by the officers that will assist us. And if at any time it's somebody else's turn to speak, if you could mute your microphones, that will avoid feedback. Any members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage, but we'll try to do so at the conclusion of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representations will not be permitted unless the members consider it appropriate. In terms of any intervention, you can catch my attention verbally or use the chat function in various ways. Okay, it may be necessary for the subcommittee occasionally to take legal advice. At my discretion, I may ask all parties to wait in this meeting while members and the relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice using a separate meeting within Microsoft Teams. We'll then return to this meeting and continue. If at any time the live stream being broadcast on the City Council's website fails, I will ask you all to mute your microphones and cameras and to stop speaking until the live stream is restored. If at any time this meeting goes into private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream. Once the private part of the meeting is over, I'll ask the meeting manager to confirm that the live stream is resumed before we continue. Excuse me. At the conclusion of the hearing, I'll invite all parties to make a brief closing submission, no more than 5 minutes summing up. No decision will be taken until all the evidence has been heard. Decision-making stage, the members and the relevant officers will withdraw from this meeting in order to determine the decision. They'll go into a separate Microsoft Teams meeting. In the event the members need to clarify any point, will be telephoned by the meeting manager, and the members will then make their decision, and you'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. Okay, so that is the procedure. So now I'll go straight on to ask Mr. Bhupinder Nandra, the licensing officer, to present his report. Mr. Nandra.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Sharif Nijad applied on the 5th of October 2022 for the grant of a premises licence for DC Supermarket, 138 Church Road, Yardley, Birmingham, B25 8UT. The purpose of the report is to consider representations that have been made in respect of an application for a premises licence which seeks to permit the sale of alcohol for consumption off the premises to operate from 8 AM until 11 PM Monday to Sunday, with the premises to remain open to the public from 8 AM until 11 PM Monday to Sunday. Representations have been received from West Midlands Police and Birmingham City Council Licensing Enforcement as responsible authorities, which are attached at appendices 1 and 2 respectively. The application is attached at Appendix 3, with site location plans attached at Appendix 4. When carrying out its licensing functions, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council's Statement of Licensing Policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. The licensing authority is also required to take such steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. The options available to the subcommittee today are to grant the license in accordance with the application, to reject the application, to grant the license subject to conditions modified to such an extent as considered appropriate, exclude from the license any of the licensed activities to which the application relates, or to refuse to specify a person in the license as the premises supervisor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nandra. So we now move on to the applicant, Mr. Edge, representing Mr. Sharif Najad. So, Mr. Edge, would you like to make your presentation on behalf of the applicant?
I would, thank you. Through you, Chair. As I said, the applicant was unwell and apologises for not being present, even though he realises how important this is for him today. Acting for the applicant, I have given full regard to the representations made against this application, the licensing objectives as set out in the Licensing Act 2003, the Council's Statement of Licensing Policy, and the guidance issued under Section 182 of the Act from the Home Office. I have provided much of the information required by the police and believe that there is sufficient for them to accept this application as genuine. Not all businesses operate to the full conventions. Some business deals take place within culture and a gentleman's handshake. And that kind of deal is suffice, along with the documents produced, including the lease for this premises signed by the applicant. It was also noted that the property falls in Band B for business rates, which is below 12,000 and therefore doesn't pay business rates. We believe this to be a good application with robust operating schedule for a premises licence, and this is demonstrated by the fact that only 2 of the 8 responsible authorities saw reason to object. Additionally, the following documents have been used to support the premises licence application: a licence operations manual, a staff training pack, challenge 25, a refusals log, DPS authorisations, and signage requesting that patrons using the premises show consideration to neighbours. This concludes my submissions, unless you have any further questions for me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edge. Councillor Morrell, have you any questions?
No questions, Chair.
Councillor Locke?
Yeah. Just what you say, the lease is with a gentleman's agreement. Is it written down or what? Is it verbal or is it written down?
No, there is a lease, and it's a formal signed lease between the previous owner and the current applicant. There was also a copy of the contract for waste services which was provided, but the actual business transfer was by method of the applicant paying a deposit of £1,000 and then paying a monthly fee, which is an agreement between the 2 of them.
Has anything been notified to the City Council, or, I know it doesn't have business rates, but has anything been notified to the council to that effect, or the land registry or anything?
It it's my belief that there isn't a requirement for that. I mean, the applicant is simply renting the business from the owners and has taken a lease to that effect.
I know
So if I may-
the question.
Okay, Mr. Richards, so if I may, the business hasn't been sold then?
Not to my knowledge, no, Chair.
Okay, so it remains with the previous owner.
The ownership of the building, yes.
Yes, but what about the business?
No, the business is now in a lease in Mr. Sharif Nejad's name, and that lease has been drawn up by the firm of solicitors and provided to West Midlands Police.
Okay, well, we'll see what their comments on this are in due course. Yes, thank you for that.
Thank you, Chair.
Is that your submission then for the moment?
It is, Chair, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I'll now move on to representations and specifically to Mr. Taj of West Midlands Police. Mr. Taj.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick check for audio. Can I be heard clearly? Just this is not a terminal I normally use.
Yes, you're very clear. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you all. The applicant, Sharif Nejad, has submitted a new premise license application for DC Supermarket. The premises previously had a premises license held by Mohammed Shekhpour. The premise license was revoked by Licensing Committee C on the 4th of August 2021 after a license review application made by Birmingham Training Standards due to counterfeit and illicit tobacco products being found on the premises. West Midlands Police supported training standards and made representations at the hearing. The decision was appealed by Mr. Shekhpour and was due to be heard on January 6, 2022. During the appeal window, Sharif Nejad, the current applicant for this premise license application, applied to transfer that license into their ownership. West Midlands Police were concerned with the legitimacy of that application and if it was merely an attempt to circumvent the decision to revoke the license. The belief was that Mr. Sharif Nejad would merely be a figurehead for Mr. Shekhpour and that they would remain having actual ownership and management of the premises. To allay those concerns at the time, a number of documents were requested to legitimize that application. These were signed lease or ownership of the premises, signed solicitors' letters, documents for the transfer of the business, copies of money transfer between the two parties, copy of the business rates. These were never supplied, and the application to transfer the premise license and become DPS were refused to Mr. Sharif Nejad. I'd like to also note that they did not attend that hearing also. Additionally, the appeal that was in place by Mr. Shekhpour was dismissed as they did not supply further documentation. 11 months later, after being refused, the applicant has submitted a new premise license application. This again has raised concerns with West Midlands Police around the legitimacy of this application, and therefore documents were requested to allay these concerns. The documents requested by myself were a copy of the contract for the sale of the business, copy of the money transfers for the sale of the business, signed solicitor's documentation for the sale of the business, a confirmation documenting that the applicant is the person who is paying the business rates. In addition, once these were acquired, a face-to-face meeting would be arranged with the applicant to discuss further conditions. The applicant's agent first applied a lease agreement which named Sharif Nejad as a buyer and Mohammed Shekhpour as the seller. The lease agreement did not specify the premises address or show it had been signed by both parties, and it was clear 2 pages were missing from this lease agreement. This was highlighted to the agent, and once it was done so, an additional sheet was supplied which named the premises as been named this application, and it showed it was signed by both parties, and it showed a payment agreement was there. The lease agreement only refers to the renting of the premises itself and has no reference to the business. So this alone was not enough to appease our concerns. The landlord for the building would remain as Mohammed Shekpour, with Abu Bakr Sharif Najad renting from him. Again, this refers to the premises itself, not the business. The remaining documents highlighted above were not supplied. The agent informed me that after a lengthy chat, there was no contract in place for the sale, and it was a gentleman's agreement in place for the sale of the business. This was described as £1,000 deposit, followed by £1,000 every month for an unspecified duration. This was word of mouth, and no evidence of yet has been supplied of this arrangement. Furthermore, it was explained that the rateable value of the premises was below the threshold for paying business tax, therefore none could be supplied. The explanation for business tax, in my opinion, was acceptable as plausible with the information provided by the applicant. However, I made the applicant aware I was sceptical to accept that what was described as a gentleman's agreement as sufficient evidence for the change of ownership. I reviewed the lease agreement again. Upon doing so, I noticed the detail around the payment method, which states, on the basis buyer pays £1,250 on the 20th of each month, every month for 5 years, cash in hand. And then there's another mark underneath that states, buyer pays £1,000 on the 20th of each month for 8 months total. Those are all the details in regards to the payments. Normally, you would expect to see one payment on a lease agreement, but there was two. Therefore, this could potentially be the payment for the sale of the business. However, it's irregular that it would be done this way, and I myself have not come across it this way. As mentioned previously, the lease does not refer to at any point that this cash arrangement will conclude in the sale of the business. With modern advancements in electronic transaction, raises questions around a cash in hand agreement. This provides a route where no audit trail is produced and no proof could be obtained of the transactions ever being carried out. This raises further doubts around the legitimate ownership of this business. A detailed explanation was requested from both parties explaining this payment plan and a signed agreement to regularize this arrangement. This was in addition to the applicant providing an official document which states the applicant pays for the refuse collection for the business, as that would show some financial control by them. The lease agreement states the landlord covers all utilities, so the refuse collection was the only document we could ask for that would show some form of payment by the applicant. The applicant was not able to provide an agreement that evidenced the applicant was not able to provide the agreement that detailed the payment explanation, as Mr. Shekpour was now out of the country. The applicant, as you heard, did supply a refuse document, but it was not signed by them. It was signed by the previous premise license holder. So this did the complete opposite of assuring Westminster Police that they had some sort of financial control of the business. A face-to-face meeting was never arranged with the applicant, as our initial request for documents evidencing a change of ownership has not been met. Therefore, it would be redundant to discuss additional operating measures with an applicant who we don't believe will be the legitimate owner running the premises. Apart from summary points that I'll come to later, I have nothing further to add at this point. If there's any questions, they are welcomed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taj. I'll just go to my colleagues. Councillor Morrell, any questions?
No questions, Chair.
Councillor Locke?
No questions, Chair.
Okay. Just one from me. Mr. Taj, if a condition were applied in the grant of a license which stated that the previous owner, Mr. Shekpour, was to be excluded from the premises and any involvement with the business, would that meet some of your concerns?
Thank you, Chair. That would have met our concerns if we believed the ownership had changed, but as we believe they will still have some involvement in the management, we have no faith that that condition will be upheld.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Okay, no further questions then. So I'll move on to Mr. Wright, licensing enforcement. Mr. Wright.
Yeah, good morning all. I had my concerns about these premises when the application come in, and under the crime and prevention objective, I had seen that the premises had been previously revoked and then refused, and the appeal had been dismissed. So I discussed this with Parantaj at BW Licensing to see what his thoughts were on it, and what he was requesting off the applicant, sorry. And I agreed to support that objective and put the representation in until such times that the documents are received to say that the new applicant was going to be the person in charge. Having spoken to BW Licensing since, I don't think those documents have been provided to their satisfaction, so I'm upholding my representation. That's all I've got to say. If there's any questions.
Okay. Councillor Locke, any questions?
No questions, Chair.
Councillor Morale?
No questions, Chair.
Okay, none from me. So thank you very much for that, Mr. Wright. Okay, so we're actually on to the summing up. So, Mr. Wright, have you anything you want to just add to what you've said as summing up?
Not really, Chair. Nothing more to add.
Okay, Mr. Taj?
Yes, Chair, I'll be very brief.
Okay.
The applicant has not been able to provide documentation which was requested to allay our concerns. Again, this is 11 months after a transfer application. Similar documents were requested at that time and not provided. So the applicant should have had some knowledge or awareness of what would have been requested when submitting this application and had those documentations ready to provide as evidence in regards to the change of ownership. The original ask has been modified to accommodate the applicant after reasons have been given, which made it evident certain elements were not achievable, such as the business rates. We have not been supplied with alternative documents, and there is still an air of ambiguity in relation to the ownership of the business. West Midlands Police have no confidence that the ownership has changed. Therefore, West Midlands Police believe granting the application would undermine past decisions made by the licensing committee in respect of the business to promote the licensing objectives, and would not be in the interest of the 2003 Licensing Act. West Midlands Police request the application be refused.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Taj. So now I'll go to Mr. Edge to sum up for the applicant. Mr. Edge.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Chair. I don't want to go over everything again in detail, as I believe we've already taken much of your time. It's the applicant's belief that the documents that were requested have been supplied, and that requesting documents that don't exist just, made it impossible for him. He's produced the lease, which was drawn up by a firm of solicitors. He's produced the waste services invoicing form and an explanation of how the business transfer had taken place. This should have been suffice for the police moving forward, and that if the license were granted, and even if it were granted with conditions to remove any access to the premises or any role in the business from the previous premises license holder, and that Mr. Sharif Nejad fell foul of the licensing regime moving forward, then the police always have the opportunity, or licensing enforcement, to call a review of the premises license and deal with it through that method. But predominantly, the decision that must be made based on evidence. And with all due respect to police licensing, they've requested many documents and requested things, but not produced any evidence that Mr. Sharif Nejad is not the genuine premises licence holder. That concludes my submission, unless you have any questions for me, Chair. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. That is the summing up. So can I thank everybody who's made a contribution today, particularly to Mr. Taj and Mr. Edge and Mr. Wright for their assistance to the committee. I'll now ask all parties to leave the MS Teams meeting, and the members, the committee lawyer and the committee manager will go into private session while the subcommittee makes its decision. You'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. So that is the end of the formal hearing today. Colleagues will reconvene